Welcome on a Monday night. Hello, Rich. I always love coming in, and getting started, and being a little bit behind, and because we have like little kids in the house, and and then I come and there's.
I mean, they weren't sitting down with their uncle JW to watch PORKY'S.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Good evening, Ken McKernan. Good evening, friends. Woot Woot from Jamie Hills, of course, the star of Skinamarink. This summer is one of the summer's independent horror hits. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Joe Ridgely. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe. But Rich, beware of Greeks bearing gifts.
How about geeks bearing gifts?
Geeks bearing gifts. That's even better. When in Nome, do as the Nomans do. Anyway, so you brought a guest tonight.
I brought a friend to you and me and to the show.
A friend of the show. I am pleased to welcome, and I have a banner for her, I think. Do I have a banner for her? No, I don't have a banner for her.
Shame on you.
Oh, that's terrible.
I sprung this on you, so you didn't have time to prepare.
No, I do have a banner. I lied. Welcome,
liar.
Big Picture Podcast co-host and actress from Festival Fave 8 Years with Gilda, Natasha Bogutsky.
Hi, guys.
Hey,
You're coming on a PORKY'S night? That's great. I guarantee there'll be no stupid sexual puns at your nature since the last visit. I promise.
Tonight, I'm all for them. In the
I'm all for puns.
PORKY'S.
Yes. So I do want to start. We usually start with a little bit of news from the day. I think the biggest story, of course, of the summer is Barbie, right? Everybody's talking about Barbie. But the news that I sent you earlier is one of the coolest things ever. I think it's one of the great things ever, right? So the news is that Margot Robbie, smart Margot Robbie, cut a back-end deal, right? That's what's been dropped in the last couple of hours, that she has indeed cut a background deal that now puts her, like, I think it's a funny kind of pairing, right? Because the original backyard deal, the back-end deal that everybody talks about, of course, is Jack Nicholson taking back-end profits of Batman, playing the Joker. And now Margot Robbie has taken back-end profits from Warner Brothers again. She has, of course, played Harley Quinn. So there's a little bit of a tie-in, which I think is cool. And this number is, for an actress in Hollywood, is an astounding number in gross points and profits. And it's something that's probably going to extend out to Greta Gerwig as well. But we're looking at a $50 million payday and box office bonus for Margot Robbie, who now all of a sudden is one of the most profitable actresses in the history of Hollywood.
With Greta being one of the most profitable female directors of all time.
Well, a female director with clout would be the word. She now has a gravitas that extends past Oscar nominees, because she's a great director before Barbie hit, she was a great director. After Barbie hit, she now had. Well, yeah, now she's bankable. There's a whole other place you can go in Hollywood when you're both a great director and bankable. Ask Christopher Nolan about that. You can do whatever the hell you want. Ask Steven Spielberg about that. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can remake West Side Story. You can remake Bullet, which I don't know why you would do, but more power to you. Bradley Cooper has a death wish, apparently, because nobody wants to be compared to Steve McQueen. But it's a great story for Hollywood. But
I do want to throw something into a little, if I can throw something out here a little bit, that kind of unfortunately puts this into a bit of a relief. Greta Gerwig is now like the #1 female director, biggest all-time box office hit for a female director. And I saw a list of 30, like the top 30 female directors by box office.
This is going to be awful. Go ahead.
Do you know what the number 30th was?
Number 30th.
It was Angelina Jolie for Unbroken, which only made like $174 million. So if you look at that on like the all-time box office list,
that's crazy.
It places like 630. So 630 movies, and only 30 of them So less than 5% were directed by women. And that's a damn shame, I think. I think we need to get more.
And the $3 billion ones are in the $3 billion ones, and the close to $1 billion ones are in the last 10 years. Right? So Frozen 2, Wonder Woman, and now Barbie. It's a weird place, but for Robbie, who is, basically bankrolled this with her production company, I somewhere Amy Schumer's crying in a beer.
I'd love to read the draft they were working on with her.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have hit on the same things that this draft was working on.
I don't think so either.
But it would
probably.
But I was also thinking about the juxtaposition. So Hollywood is enamored with Barbie. Barbie's doing great. Barbie's doing great worldwide. Barbie's doing everything worldwide, and we're still in the middle of a SAG strike. And Margot Robbie's deal is more of the haves and the have-nots, right? You have people who are like, I was trying to explain. I think we explained it on Generation Movie last week. The idea that Suits is doing well on Netflix. It's a great show. Don't get it. I love the show. I watched it in 2009 when it premiered, all the way up to Meghan Markle becoming a princess. But the idea that none of those people are making any money off of it at all on Netflix is a crime. And it's something we should, I don't know. I don't understand how you could think anything else.
I have a couple friends who are SAG, and on occasion, especially now during the strike, one or two of them have shared their residual checks, and they're really all small. They're really pathetic. And I'm just like, if you could strike twice simultaneously, you should, because this is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and the big story today was that they're not going to allow any kind of strike crossing in WGA productions in the United States. So we're at a very big thing. Can I ask you a question, Miss filmmaker extraordinaire, playwright?
Be my guest.
The Barbie experience, right? Where we're at right now.
Okay.
Do you think it's something that can be done without IP? Like, Barbie is a household name, and it's a $1 billion movie. Is this a phenomenon that we can have that would be like Bridesmaids, or something where you can have a phenomenon but not have IP attached to it?
No. Not in the current climate that we are in right now. Barbie is not only a household name, it comes with a very large canon and a backstory going back to when the dolls were created that actually helps this story to reach the audience it needs to. And with its feminist ideas intact from when the dolls were created. So there's a huge canon. I'm part of the Barbie movie generation. I did have some of them on VHS as a kid. So when you look at some of how much of that had seeped into like Barbie Swan Lake, Rapunzel, this and that one, you're paying attention to this and you're pulling out chunks and stuff as you're watching the Barbie movies. I was looking at Rich going, yeah, that one was discontinued.
That one was discontinued.
Yeah, a minute before the voiceover done by Helen Mirren, thank you, actually says it. I was looking at that one
from a male nerd perspective. When you're watching a Star Wars show, a Star Wars movie, Rich and I know Rich knows this, and I don't have my figures behind me because I'm switching up or moving. But when you're watching a Star Wars movie, it's the opposite. It's like, that guy's going to be a figure. That guy's going to be a figure. Yeah. Holy shit, I'm going to have to spend $25 on a guy who sits at Jabba's palace. You know what I mean? Like, ridiculous. But
more to the point of your question, though, JW, I don't think we're in a filmmaking era that would allow for anybody, male or female, to direct an original idea movie, a non-IP movie that conceivably could get to $1 billion. I don't think the studios trust filmmakers enough. They're too much. They're very risk averse at this point. and all they know is
I was just I think it's intriguing. It's an intriguing question because it's just one of those questions that's kind of hovering over the box office this summer, and it's not just because I think part of the intrigue of Barbie, and I have to admit I haven't seen it yet. Everybody knows I was sick. Still working on it. I have stuff I need to catch up on. I'm working. I don't even know how I'm going to sit for 3 hours for Oppenheimer. It's been bad. It's been a bad month for me. But anyway, I don't know how much you know, Natasha, but don't be upset. Don't be mad at me. Rich will tell you off camera that I have legit reasons why I can't sit for extended hours. But what I am going to say, I do want to turn a little bit. A movie bombed this weekend that I really enjoyed, except for a few minor quibbles I have. And it bombed. And I also, I want to throw this out to you because I know you guys both saw it. And I saw it. And it's something we can discuss. Yeah. And I want to throw this theory out for you. If this movie that opened this weekend, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, if this movie launched Universal's Dark Universe, instead of The Mummy, instead of pouring $150 million into The Mummy, they pour $45 million into this movie, and they make a few better decisions. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I have two decisions that I wanted made, and I needed made, and they didn't do it, and I'll tell you both off camera later. Actually, I might tell you now. I wanted one character at the end to declare that he was somebody else. If that makes any sense.
I think I know where you're going.
I think, yes.
A doctor who is tracking somebody at Carfax Abbey should have a very specific name in Dracula lore. And if they had done that, I would have screamed out loud in the theater and clapped and cheered. Because not only would you have put a nice button around a ribbon around the film, but you would have changed. What was that?
You actually cannot do that. That is a change that you cannot make in the story. Because I know who you want it to be. And based on the story, that person has been tracking Dracula for almost their entire life. They cannot just all of a sudden set it up.
We've already changed so much, though. We took a log and made an entire movie out of it.
They didn't change a lot.
You didn't change it. I think you filled in between the lines.
Right, and that's fine. And I think it's a change. The other change I would have made.
They changed nothing that is going to change the main story of Dracula. Nothing.
We're adapting. We're adapting. I'm just saying. I think it would have worked. And you can't tell me the kid playing the actor playing the character. If he announces in the bar, I'm blank, blank, blank. You can't tell me it wouldn't have gotten a rise from the crowd. Anyway, I really liked the movie. I felt I made a couple critical decisions that were a little bit off. I wanted a little guy with a cane going up the gangplank. I didn't need the monster. Although I love the design. So, but what about this theory? If they had just waited and launched the Dark Universe with this movie, with a very good, a young director, not spending a ton of money on a movie that looks fantastic. It looks like a 60s movie that would have cost $50 million in the 60s. You know what I mean? Like I enjoyed the movie. I love some of the decisions because some of the decisions are cold-hearted. They are brutal.
The scope of this film is incredible.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. But I didn't. I had a couple quibbles. Like the other quibble that I thought was funny. I was sitting there and I was like, "We'll just bring all the boxes out into the sun. We know something's in a box. Oh, which box is it, by the way? I don't know. The one with the intricate trinkets on it. You know what I mean? Like all the other boxes are garbage with just like the stamp that you see in Raiders, the Nazi symbol on the side of the box. And then one has like, graphic silver pieces and coffin sides that open up. And they're like, which box could be the important one? I don't know. Shucks.
But the answer to your question is no. It couldn't have even survived then.
I think it could have. Because I think it could have. I think it was an intriguing point that was put out because the Dark Universe was looking for a unique take. And this is a unique take and a unique start, a build.
Mm-hmm.
A unique take that was modernized. That's what Dark Universe was going for. This is
Which was a mistake, though.
Period.
That was a mistake.
It is a mistake. But because this is full period, no one is going to go out to see it because period movies, unless they're during the award season, are not a box office draw. And as Ken McKernan just mentioned in the comments, horror movies can't survive summertime releases. They can't. This movie was put out at the wrong fucking time.
Should have been released 4 weeks from now.
Agreed.
Oh, sure. This is the Ken McKernan, good friend of the show. I disagree, though. Like, horror movies do very well. First off, horror movies in this current situation that aren't period pieces would be my answer to you, are doing very well all over the schedule, right?
And there's the caveat.
There's the rub. The rub is that it's a period piece. And my thing is, bringing everything forward, doing the Dark Universe movies set in the present time isn't the way to go. I mean, there are rumors that there's a Bride of Frankenstein circulating, right, with Christian Bale and being directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. They've got to be period pieces. Rich and I are getting ready after we do Porky's and a couple other raunchy comedies. We're going to do movies that are uniquely period based. We're going to do some Hammer films. And the thing is, the period is what sells the movies.
Yeah, it is.
Even a movie that celebrates its 36th anniversary today, by the way, I have to get this in. Monster Squad's 36 years old today. Even that movie, in its bright, future-orientated 1980s suburb, has a period segment through it. And I just think when you're doing these classic monsters,
Rich,
the period stuff works.
Yes.
what is he talking about?
You've never seen the Monster Squad?
I've never even heard of it.
What?
It's on my Plex server. That's your assignment.
What? You've never heard of the redheaded stepchild that is related to the Goonies? The dark cousin underbelly of the Goonies?
Again, I didn't like Goonies. I'm gonna get kicked off this freaking podcast.
Why are you bringing her?
Wow!
Why are you bringing her?
Dude, bring her back.
What is this? I don't like the Goonies, and I don't know what the Monster Squad is. I'm not going to kick you off the podcast. The comments are going to kick you off the podcast.
I blame the schools.
So wait, you've never... Okay, so...
Bitch, I can get both of your asses in certain genres, okay? Don't come at me about 80s movies. I'll school you in freaking period movies.
Okay.
Like Turning Red?
Don't start with me.
Wait a second. So wait, you don't know what Turning Red is? No, stop. Stop picking on her now.
That is.
So wait. So
I am Turning Red.
She hates it when I pun like that. So,
just so we're clear, The Monster Squad is a 1986 movie made by Fred Decker. It came out after The Goonies, and it's a little bit dirtier, and it's got more cussing in it. It's less Spielbergian and more like kind of gritty video release of the 80s. And basically, it's a bunch of kids that fight Dracula, the Gill Man, Wolfman, Frankenstein, and the Mummy. It's a fantastic movie. It's a wonderful piece of 80s cinema with one of the great versions of Dracula ever put on film. Highly underrated how great the Dracula is. No shit. Ask Rich. I'm not kidding. The Dracula in the Monster Squad is fantastic. It's a chilling it's a chilling performance.
I'll watch it soon.
And he also Natasha scares the bejesus out of a 5-year-old on camera, which she wasn't ready for, and it's fantastic.
It's a kid.
But it's celebrating 36 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to get that in. I think the period piece stuff with horror films needs to come back. I think we lost track of it when they did the Wolfman with all the bad effects.
I'm sorry. No. I love that version of the movie, and I think it has.
Sure.
It does. The third act.
It has
really,
moments.
Really bad effects in the third act.
The effects suck, Natasha. They suck.
That first transformation sequence, when I saw it in the cinema on Valentine's weekend, it took me back to American Werewolf in London, and it scared the fucking bejesus out of me.
Wait, hold on. Wait, Natasha. First off, Joe says, good evening, Natasha. Great to see you. Jamie says, oh my gosh, I think it's because you haven't seen the Monster Squad, but then we'll get down. No, it's not. I know. I'm playing. It's for dramatic effect. And then she said, I haven't seen either of those movies. Oh, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm not the only one.
Yes, but that doesn't reward you. That means you're both wrong. Or have been underschooled.
Maybe we just have better taste.
No, Monster Squad's fantastic. I enjoyed Dracula Untold. Was hoping for a series. I think Dracula Untold is one of those mistake Universal movies where they didn't get enough of what they were doing.
It could have been worse. It could have been Dracula 2000.
And then she wrote, apparently she doesn't watch our shows. Monster Squad guys have been on the network a number of times.
I know which episodes I was avoiding.
Oh, come on.
Wow. By the way, the Monster Squad kids are great, by the way. They're all fantastic. A lot of them do a lot of conventions and signings, and so we want to give them props. But
I will add it to my horror list for this year because I'm starting. Horror is an area where I actually.
Are you gonna join us in watching some classic horror Hammer films?
I've seen some of the Hammer films. Because Christopher Lee, obviously. I think Criterion had a collection. I think it was last year, and I knocked out.
But those Hammer horror films embraced the period piece.
Oh yeah,
while bringing it forward. But that's what I mean. I think we need a bunch of. I'm going to say it out loud with everybody listening to the show. I think we need a bunch of period horror films, just to.
I'd be down for that.
Just to get it back into the swing of things.
We haven't had a good look at The Mummy.
Well, yeah, but even that's not really I don't consider The Mummy a horror film. You're talking about Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, it's pulpy action adventure, but some of the effects of the first film have horror moments to it.
Yeah, it has, but it's not. I don't view it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I just don't view it as a horror film. It's not. It's got too many actiony elements to be a straight horror film. It's more. It got more in tune with Indiana Jones than it does with. Yeah. But let's get to the movie that we're talking about tonight. Speaking of a movie that's kind of out of place in the current place of things. Speaking of a movie,
it's a period piece.
And it's a period piece. And it was, this is the movie we're looking at tonight. As I cover up all three of us. Keep an eye out for the funniest movie about growing up ever made. You'll be glad you came. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Wow, is that a bad pun on a poster? I can't even believe the MPAA allowed it. I just don't think they were smart enough to realize that it was a joke.
You should have seen the trailer.
Let's see. Kathy Fraser says, if I can watch The Mummy, it's not a horror film. Thank you, Kathy, for that.
She
does not like horror films.
But she's not a horror girl at all.
Not a horror gal.
Horror films, if it's R-rated, it's not going to sell. It has to have some action elements to bring in the younger crowd, the kiddos.
Well, no, but I think... Yeah, and I think the PG-13ization of horror films is kind of hurt. And that's why you're seeing the current trend right now. If you make a good R-rated horror film that people kind of talking Barbarian, I'm talking Smile, I'm talking Talk to Me. If you make a good, decent horror film, that people will flock to it as long as it's cool. But Porky's is one of the rare cases. I was doing research, Rich. I sent you numbers that I could not. Yeah. I could not fathom. And we'll talk about that when we get to box office. But so please stick around for that because it is an illuminating conversation, to say the least. It is the most ridiculous.
It's the most revealing.
I don't know. It's just weird. the sheer volume of, like, I wasn't expecting the numbers I was reading. Let's talk about production.
All right.
Production was basic. I did, like, it's really funny. This is going to make us feel old. But I was reading up on some of the stars. And, you know, one of the stars who plays Mark, right? Not Mark. He plays, hold on. This is scary times. Billy, you know, gave an extended interview when the movie hit its 40th anniversary a couple years ago. And Billy was played by Mark Harrier. Mark Harrier is now 68 years old.
Woo.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so Billy
from 1982, so
yeah, no, but you know, he talks about the
41
production of the
years.
film, like, basically, you know, the idea that the film, one of the things that came up about the film that's really super interesting, he talks in the production about the most famous sequence in the movie, which is, of course, the sequence where they're in a shower, the guys are peeping toms through like holes in the showers, and that was filmed with Bob Clark in the shower place reading the female lines, and on the other side of the set were the guys. So there were no women. Like, they filmed in two separate parts at two separate times, even though it's intercut to look perfect. And the actors that were, you know, the one actor who recently passed away, by the way, I was really sad to read that, that the actor that played Tommy, Wyatt Knight, passed away a few years ago. But basically, he wasn't even the tongue or the member through the hole was not that actor. Bob Clark brought in a stunt tongue and a stunt peepee, and basically, you know, so nothing in that scene.
What's the term in Orgasmo? Stunt cock.
Stunt cock, yes.
Stunt cock.
But I was looking at it tonight, right? Rewatching the movie tonight. It is a seamless. From a production standpoint, you have the girl shooting a sequence with nobody on this side of the camera. You have the guy shooting a sequence with nobody on this side of the, like, it's an incredible, like, when you put it all together,
it cuts very well.
It cuts amazingly well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued by that. I was also intrigued that basically in part of the production was that they hired all working summer stock actors. So the reason that nobody looks familiar in the movie is because there were various places in Florida, Canada, that they grabbed actors that were looking for work and willing to take a small amount. There was only one actor, Mark Harrier relates, that actually almost made it into the final cut. And he thanks the world that he wasn't, because Billy was originally supposed to be played by, get this is shocking, Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid had just filmed a Breaking Away, and he came in and he read for the part of Billy. And you know, Harrier was very sure he was going to lose the role, but Dennis Quaid was then told by his agents not to take it. We can find you some other things. Don't do it. Yeah, you're riding a wave after Breaking Away. And I just found that really interesting that almost all the young actors were from summer stock or places where, you know, they weren't getting regular actors that were in teen comedies or anybody that was in teen movies except for Quaid. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, and that the movie was made as a tax shelter.
Wow. It was made partly with Canadian money, right?
Right, and the Canadian money allowed for a greater tax shelter than they would have received in the United States. And the person that co-wrote the script with Roger Swabo, it seems incredible to realize that Porky's, which earned more than $200 million worldwide, was done as a tax shelter, but that's the way it was, which is incredible. When you think about it, Harrier also talks about that they weren't well paid, and that after the movie hit big, Bob Clark gave each of the 6 leads, including Wendy, so the 5 guy leads and Wendy, each got a 1/6 of a percentage of the grosses.
That was really nice.
Well, but yeah, Bob Clark didn't have to do it. He took it out of his money from the movie being such a hit, which I thought was really cool. He's like, somewhere there should have been more money for the actors and everything, but it just wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm. And, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, Bob Clark has always seemed, from whatever I read about him,
Generous.
to be
Very generous.
a nice guy and a generous guy. I mean, you don't make a Christmas Story and have an evil, cynical heart inside you. Then again, he also made Murder by Decree and Black Christmas, which are also great films, but far more cynical, I would say.
Well,
Wait, whoa, hold the boat. My brain just exploded.
You did not know
Christmas
this?
Story, Porky's.
You didn't know this?
No.
Also, you should realize at this point that one of them was a hit in theaters and one of them was not.
Yeah, I know. I did know that Christmas Story got bigger, over years of it playing on television.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz effect.
Yeah.
A Christmas Story and Shawshank Redemption, A Christmas Story, and the Wizard of Oz effect are the movies that, through sheer will of television cable audiences, has transcended the space-time Hollywood mythos.
And It's a Wonderful Life as well.
Yes. Yeah, any movie that transcends it, because It's a Wonderful Life bombed too. Nobody wants to talk about that. It's a Wonderful Life wasn't even in the top 10 the year it came out, which is
that's because they released a Christmas movie in the summer.
Well, there's Christmas in July, Rich. Let's not judge.
Okay.
But the production was like fairly quiet. They shot in a lot of it in Canada. Again, for those great perks. The script was kind of 2 people working around Roger Swaybo and Bob Clark. Bob Clark got really sick right around they were writing the screenplay in the late 70s. He got really sick, and Swaybo kind of just ran through the entire script. And when they came to, Clark was like, "This is perfect. This is exactly what I was trying to do." And I just think it's a really interesting kind of it's not a big production. And the Florida sequences look Floridian, but they're definitely not. So the production was kind of quiet, and except for the resulting thing with Kim Cattrall, because Kim Cattrall was the only named actress who had been on television shows and done anything, and her reaction to things that happen on the set. Kim Cattrall has a wonderful. Have you guys ever heard about how she feels about her nudity in anything she's done?
She kind of disavows herself, doesn't she?
No, she said, well, no, it's an interesting take. Kim Cattrall says you've never actually seen Kim Cattrall naked. You've only seen the Kim Cattrall parts naked. So the characters that she plays. It's not Kim Cattrall. She goes with the whole, it's not Kim Cattrall. Which is
okay. She totally disassociates mentally.
Yes.
The character happens to be naked and her.
Yes. But
never mind those bits are entirely, absolutely identical to each other. Somebody has a question?
Yes.
Question as a comment, as an actress who has done nudity many times at this point, I can definitely say I do the exact same thing. And
okay.
That's how I get my family to come also to see shows, is I have to remind them, like my parents, yeah, you may have given birth to me and yeah, it's my body, but I look at it as I'm a vessel for the next couple of hours.
I was also a vessel once, and I got paid very little, and it ended up all over Eastern Europe. It was weird. But let's see.
That's the story I need to hear.
Yes, no. Christmas Story, I basically stole from European Vacation. A Christmas Story is more popular now than it was in the 80s. Yes. A Christmas Story in the 80s wasn't popular at all, to be frank. But we'll talk about that someday along the lines. Production quiet on this one. Not a lot of there wasn't fighting amongst the kids. Everybody kind of lived together. Very when Rich and I do the show, Natasha, there's always usually when we did the Terms of Endearment show, there was so much fighting behind the scenes between Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger that it dominated the production. Like Jaws, where we have a Broadway play now about how, Robert Shaw hated Richard Dreyfuss, and poor Roy Scheider just kind of sat there and said, guys, we're collecting checks.
Or Baby
Come
Jane.
on.
The Baby Jane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Baby Jane set. That's another period horror film. Anyway, we're on a roll for the next thing. But so production goes well. Box office, this is where it gets wild.
This movie was a freaking nuclear explosion in America, in American pop culture.
It's an explosion. Yeah, and the numbers are staggering. I rarely do this. I look at these things before the hand. I think I sent you the numbers on Saturday. Where I just said, holy fuck. I had no idea that Porky's was this I remember Porky's being popular, but I do not remember it playing for 122 straight days. Or playing for almost 17 weeks, 12 weeks. But the numbers are crazy, Rich. We're looking at its opening weekend. It grosses $7.6 million. It ends up grossing $109 million.
And that's just at the U.S. box office.
Because it didn't make it out of it didn't really make it out of it's U.S. and Canada.
Tossing that into the inflation calculator.
341.
I'm sorry?
I had 341. It was at 341, which is essentially a Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was seeing 366.
Okay, I'll take the higher number. Then we get a Spider-Man into the across the Spider-Verse, which when you think about it real hard, R-rated. I didn't mean hard. That was bad. When you think about it, R-rated, full of nudity, full of everything.
I think because a lot of that you had never seen before, even in a sex comedy or a teen comedy. There was, Frank talk about getting laid. A lot of Frank talk about getting laid. That's one of the plot points, which
Pee-wee.
Yes, it will eventually. It ends up creating a whole different thing we're going to talk about. We got measuring. We got Cherry Forever. You brought your ruler. I can't believe you did. Cherry Forever.
Better make it a yardstick.
I refuse to bring my ruler. Well, that's kind. That's a kind word. That's super nice.
I was trying to be nice to you too.
That was super nice.
Around. Meat was deformed. I don't want to imagine.
Oh my God. Porky. Ken writes, Porky was popular when it came out on VHS. I was 12 and wasn't allowed to see it in the theaters. When it hit VHS, it took off. I would also argue with you, Ken. It might not have been VHS. It might have been HBO. Because HBO is where all of these movies, R-rated movies, once HBO got over the whole thing about playing R-rated movies during the daytime, you could come home from school and, inadvertently stumble into Animal House and Caddyshack and Porky's. So, but I understand where you're coming from. I mentioned that in our write-up. Porky's actually became, I was talking to my cousin's wife who does not like filth about different things. And she said she watched it at a slumber party when she was 13, being forced to watch it at a slumber party. And she remembers it as being a jarring experience for her because she just wasn't ready. And she goes, but it was a coming of age thing. So not only is the movie about coming of age, but eventually becomes a coming of age, mark for a whole generation of kids in the 80s. Although you're young, so you don't. But forever,
it was a coming of age film for me as well, because I bought it on DVD probably when I was about 14.
That's about the age, right? That's about the age for everyone.
It was a blind buy. I was
a blind buy. Oh boy.
I was looking for something kind of really ridiculous, and I mentioned to my mom as we were like jaunting around a Walmart, I'm like, well, what is Porky's about? And she's like, it's a sex comedy from the 80s. She goes,
sign me up.
She's like, to be honest, I probably haven't watched it since it came out. And I'm like, do you remember liking it? And she goes,
yeah,
I don't remember it at all. I went,
well, that was good for you. That's why you got it.
And I'm like, I don't know anyone here.
Oh, Kim Cattrall.
Kim Cattrall.
Mannequin.
Is it worth it for Kim Cattrall? And then I was like, I got it in the $5 bucket. $5.
Actually, it ends up being very worth it for Kim Cattrall because she's fantastic in it.
And
great sequence.
Took it home, put it in the DVD player, and I haven't laughed that much since the first time I saw Disorder in the Court of the Three Stooges.
Excellent. Good choice.
Gone, which is why tonight when Rich said we're starting we're doing a raunchy comedy thing. At first, I was like, oh. He goes, but we're starting with Porky's. And I went, I'm there.
Well, the other ones, I'm going to be honest with you. Part of what we're doing, it's a real interesting thing because I don't know the movies that Rich and I chose. It's a really interesting arc because Porky's is definitely, when we get to the critique of it in a moment, Porky's could definitely be like the low end with regards to how it treats women, minorities, how it treats, like, it's kind of the low end. And what we've done with the other ones we've done, they kind of hit an arc where eventually the women are in charge. So like
women are in charge as well.
Well, yes, I think they are. But there is a distinct the movies we picked, and we'll get to them later on tonight because we're going to announce. But there's a distinctive arc that basically carries through the movies we picked for this particular raunchy 80s comedies. We got a couple comments. Let's see. Wendy's here says, hi, JW. Hi, Wendy. She's, of course, from our other show on Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday nights? It's Wednesday nights. Thursday nights. Is it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday. I'm so sorry. It's Wednesday nights, Sticky Microphone, great show, a lot of voiceover artists, incredible. Wendy's an incredible host. She hosts with Joe. She makes Joe Ridgely blush every week. It's fantastic. Ken McKernan writes, no HBO in Canada, so then it was a VHS. Wow, that's a shocking revelation that there's no HBO in Canada. What a fucking crime that is. That's terrible. Well, yeah, what is that all about? We had HBO the very first month it was available. Yeah, so did I. My dad was taping things on Betamax. And then Jerry writes, Porky's is the greatest movie of its kind. Yes, I concur.
Yes.
So
it launched a subgenre through the 80s that everybody was chasing, and I don't think anybody actually ever got up to the box office grosses that this movie did.
No, like even in the comparisons of the movies that we're going to talk about, the rest of the summer 80s Raunch Fest. But the box office for this movie is astounding. $366 million, gross where you're looking at it today. Sticky Mike is on Thursdays. I was right.
Sorry.
I told you I was right. Sticky Mike is on Thursday. I'm so fucking sorry, Joe. I've been sick. You gotta hold me. I'm getting back up to speed. Plus, I don't have all my toys, so I'm not as good right now. Yeah, I'm just anyway. But the box office is astounding me. The idea that it didn't have any chance at worldwide, that it grossed $109 million over the amount of weeks it grossed. When we talk about these movies from the early 80s and middle 80s, this movie lasted almost as long, not as long, because, I was going to say E.T., but anything over 15 weeks is an amazing presence. You know what I mean? And 17 weeks at the box office is crazy. That is nuts. let's talk about critical response then and now, because we are dealing with a sex comedy. I want to talk about then first. Then it was like the then, Rich, the reviews I read and the Rotten Tomato stuff I was looking at, they all just kind of viewed it as lowbrow, grade A, trash. Nothing too upsetting. Although Siskel and Ebert really took it to task.
This was certainly not one of their favorite films of the year. They were
they hated it. They hated this movie with a fucking passion that you rarely see from Siskel and Ebert.
With a hatred, a passionate hatred you rarely see from them for a movie that wasn't a slasher film in the 80s, because they hated those things.
Yeah, they hated slasher films. But I think it's also like they also put it in its place. Like the Ebert one is really interesting because he basically says, one of my favorite things about the review, even in an easy scene like the ones where the guys spy on the girls in the locker room, the director, Bob Clark, blows it. Peeping Tom scenes can be very funny. Remember John Belushi on the ladder in Animal House. Here it's just smarmy. Now, some would argue that John Belushi on the ladder in Animal House is smarmy. Don't get me wrong, Belushi's way cuter than the folks in Porky's. He's adorable.
I would say that the reason the Belushi scene works is because there's a certain amount of physical comedy with him doing the ladder and things like that.
Also, he doesn't get the payoff. He doesn't get the full payoff. He sees her breasts, but then he falls over and misses everything else that he's looking for. So I understand that. Natasha, how do you feel about scenes of a voyeuristic nature being centerpieces of said teen comedies of the 80s?
Well, it's not just teen comedies in the 80s. I mean, that carried over a little bit into the 90s as well. I mean, anyone remember the really creepy fucking scene in American Pie?
There were so many. There were so many, Natasha. I won't judge you. Which creepy scene were you talking? Were you talking about the one where he's fucking a pie? Because that was, and the idea that I just want to point out
all over the internet.
That one's not great, but also the idea of fucking a pie, that he's done it before and he's put the pie back. I'm just throwing it out there. There's definitely a sequence part of that where it's, I've done this before and I put the pie back.
You just put me off the key lime pie in my fridge, but I was going to this.
What will your husband say? Anyway.
Revenge of the Nerds for me is one of the worst raunchy comedies.
So we got two comments. Jerry, hold on. Jerry writes, the more they hate it, the better it usually is. Fair.
I would disagree, but
Private School had a good voyeur scene too, and Revenge of the Nerds voyeur scene is good as well. We'll agree to disagree on this.
Debatable.
But what I'm saying, I think when
But where are you on the Porky scene though, Natasha?
Where are you on that?
The Porky sequence in the shower, I love because it doesn't feel one-sided. I mean, yes, the guys are technically creeping on the girls, but sooner or later, the girls figure it out and they pull their own prank back. They're not dumb. They're not there just to be ogled. They actually, honest, you can't tell me those girls were sort of getting off on it.
Well, that is an entirely different can of worms.
As the power dynamic?
It's a power dynamic. Absolutely. They hold the power. The women hold it in that scene. And it is shown that they hold it.
And
that's one of the things. Another thing that Ebert didn't like was that it didn't hit the anti-Semitic button hard enough, or the racism part hard enough, right? But the thing about changing the dynamics, you're right. The Wendy character controls a lot of the things going on in the movie in the back.
And even though
on the side, she's pulling pranks as well.
And even though she is very much, I guess the guys would call her a tramp, she's respected for it. She's not made fun of, not rarely. I mean, on occasion they'll make a crack about, well, Pee Wee needed to get late. We set him up with Wendy. Wendy, damn, I thought she had better taste than that.
Meat has the worst line in the entire movie about Wendy when he says something like the entire town has already seen it after they do the Mike Hunt joke. But overall, she's in control, and she actually is control of his virginity for God's sake. I would also argue, like, from my response now, I think one of the things going for it, and another movie we're going to do in this little 80s Raunch fest, what this movie does have going for it is at least they make the right decision on the racism. And for me, the Brian and Tommy getting together and working it out, and then the rejection of his racist father, I think is a pretty good for the 80s.
I know.
Is a pretty good kind of like, it sets the movie a little bit apart because it takes a very serious subject. You know what I mean? Like, it takes, the anti-Semitic words. Tommy's overmatched from the get-go. You know what I mean? He's asking about flying kites, and Brian walks up to him and is like, "It's kike, Kike. You're too dumb to even be a racist."
And I love that line, but also setting it as a period piece amps that up a little bit more. It amps the racist, the African American guy at the beginning. It amps the anti-Semitic, so that
I mean, you have two characters call out the Southern boy for using the racial slur, and they get him to change it
in
early.
the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, in the first 5 minutes. The N-word gets dropped, and then immediately he gets scolded. Like, don't be a dumb Southern boy.
Dumb redneck.
Dumb redneck. So I'm in a disagreement with the guys on that. I think it is one of the best coming of age comedies. I think it's also interesting that as we've gotten through the critical response, the critical responses in the 80s weren't great, but there is not a soul that grew up in the 80s on that I know of that hasn't seen the movie. At least has seen it in some way where they don't hate it. It's always reminiscent. Like, aside from the person I talked to yesterday who had a weird experience at a slumber party, most people look at it like I snuck it with my friends in the basement. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was a coming of age. It was coming of age for us. It was coming of age for the kids in the movie. That is where it's wonderful legacy kind of. This is the first signpost that we're going to have 80s teen comedies, and we're going to have 80s sex comedies, and we're going to have 80s raunch comedies, and that we're eventually going to have 90s raunch comedies and 2000 raunch comedies, and even to a certain extent 2023 raunch comedies. The legacy
when you
is
make
astounding.
$109 million off a $5 million budget movie, you're basically doing.
We didn't even talk about that.
Your budget.
It's a $5 million budget's ridiculous, Rich. Ridiculous.
Yeah, people are going to chase that budget. Even by today's standard, that's like less than 20 million. So let me.
It's an incredible return on investment, and it played again.
Yeah, it's 16. It's almost $17 million in today's money.
I think the screenplay is really good. I think Clark gets pretty good performances out of a non-professional cast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they went on to do other things, some of them, but for the most part, a lot of them didn't act again, or we didn't see them on screen again.
Oh wait,
because they were tainted.
One of the only other actors we saw before this movie, besides Kim Cattrall, was Alex Karras, because several years earlier he was in Blazing Saddles.
Right, so he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid to get into a dirty comedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost everybody else in Hollywood didn't want to touch. That's why Dennis Quaid's people wouldn't let him do it. Kim Cattrall, they put her name at the top of one of the posters. She thought her career was over. Little did she know she'd be starring in a show called Sex and the City, and would totally make her money off of it in real life. But I think the franchise viability is questionable. I did do a quick comparison chart because, again, they go down in quality, they go down in box office. So Porky's hits in 82. Porky's 2 the next day hits immediately in 83. Bob Clark directs again. And that one only grosses, what's your guesses on the gross for Porky's 2 the next day, Natasha? 109 for Porky's. What does Porky's 2 get?
It drops about 80%.
Oh, that's close. Okay, what about you, Rich? Where do you say it goes?
Well, I'm staring right now at the numbers.com.
Oh, you're a cheater. You're a cheater.
I have this all pulled up
30,
already. You know I have
30,
like 10 tabs open while we do this show.
I know, so do I. 33 million. Goes from 109 to 33 on virtually the same budget, which is kind of like, you know, although the budget goes up a little bit, right? It goes up a little tiny bit.
Which is
but
still
33 is a great performance for a comedy in the 80s. And then Porky's Revenge drops all the way down to 20. So, and then, you know, the franchise viability. In 2009, Howard Stern buys the company and buys the rights. And there is, I found this today. I watched it today. And it's complete. Oh, go ahead.
Howard Stern bought the remake rights in 2002. And he started working on it. And do you know who he had developing the script for him as a writer?
I did not. I didn't get
Alex Winter.
What?
Alex Winter. Yeah. I have one of his drafts laying around here somewhere, and I've never gotten around to reading it, and I wanted to read it this weekend, but I got distracted by some Dan Aykroyd Ghostbusters 3 stuff.
Of course.
Dropping names.
You're so easily distracted.
I know.
Shiny object syndrome. I've told him this.
But they had
Alex Winter would have been in a unique voice. That would have been interesting.
Yes, they had some legal trouble between Stern's production company and 2 other companies that also claimed to own the rights. And this all went to trial in like 2013. They all reached some kind of settlement, but no one knows if Stern is going to has the rights to or not. And at this point, he's pretty much dropped out of like producing films. He had Porky's. He had something else on his plate too that he was developing that it just never happened. But that remake you were talking about, that 2009.
Oh my God, it was putrid.
Yeah, that was one of the other companies who thought they had the rights, and
so they made it a la Sony making Spider-Man movies to keep the rights, and it's a placeholder.
It's a Fantastic Four movie. We got to make something really quick. We'll throw it out.
It's an hour. It's an hour and 18 minutes of pure trash. It's called Pee-wee. It's called Porky's Pimpin' Pee-wee, and it is awful. It makes references to the original film. It is a terrible, terrible movie that is more in line with American Pie. It's very American Pie heavy. It's 3 friends.
Like American Pie.
Yes, but it's not American Pie. It's, you know, Porky still exists. It's run by a person that's down the line from the original Porky. Pee-wee is a relative of the original Pee-wee. Meat's a relative of the original Meat. It's a weird fucking movie, and it's really bad. And it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. We got a couple of things. Joe wrote, so many clips of this episode should go up on that TikTok thing. No. I don't know how to do that.
I could.
Funniest scenes are with Bob Ricker. Ken McKernan, I agree. She's a fantastic. It's a fantastic performance. A comedic heavy. She's very much, you know, she's Nancy Parsons who plays. What was that?
I couldn't. Oh.
What did I say?
You said a comedic heavy, and Natasha took it as a pun.
Oh, it wasn't a pun. But okay, she is a heavy. I would say the hurdy-gurdy music was playing, and I was seeing the fat lady at the circus. I don't like movies where fat people are bad guys, but she's a pretty great bad guy, and everybody's scared of her. And you know, She has one of the funny sequences in the entire movie where she's trying to put forth her plan to catch Tommy and his tallywhacker, and it's just 3 guys busting a nut and her just being deathly serious, holding onto the desk like she's gonna rip it apart. But I think the viability is a weird thing, but the legacy of the movie is it creates 1,000 movies, Rich? Is it the movie that launches 1,000 ships into the night searching? Yeah, 1,000 ripoffs. Just sending movies out into the night trying to find $100 million under their pillow. And I think that's part of it. Let's see. I have the Porky's poster in my room. He does. I've seen it. It's a great poster. And then Ken writes, Art Hindle played the sheriff, popular Canadian actor. Yeah, he was really good. Like, the brother is really good. Like, the components of the movie are great. I also think it's interesting in that it's a chunk together movie, right? So you have teen comedy, you have, weird racist things going on, and then you also have a Men on a Mission movie near the end, where they're pulling apart a giant roadhouse in the middle of nowhere with boats and blowing up bridges, and
it's
so
a little
it's a little A-Team, a little Dirty Dozen-ish. The boys from Angel Beach are here. But the legacy is, part of it is very few 80s teen films have a camaraderie to them that this movie has. You get the idea that these people were friends, right? And I think that's one legacy where the successful ones, the American Pies, the Bridesmaids, some of the other 80s teen comedies we're going to talk about, the camaraderie of the group is important. The group they have to be on the same page. And almost everybody in this movie is. So it's kind of a legacy earmark where you get exactly what you need to get to make this kind of movie work. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think there's a great chemistry about the cast. Again, relatively newcomers to film for most of them. But you do buy the fact that they're all friends.
You do.
Even if they look like they're the oldest high schoolers in existence.
And I would say the legacy of the franchise also. Porky's 2 the Next Day isn't bad, but it's not great. And Porky's Revenge is terrible. But it's a bad movie. Sports betting, basketball point shaving. It's just weird. And also, I'd be remiss to not state, this is one of the first comedy movies to ever have a video game. An Atari 2600 video game that came out in 1986 from 1983 from 20th Century Fox. So
they did not port that over to a television.
I'd love to see what the 8-bit naked girls look like.
Well, I would assume they're just stick figures with boobies, right? It would be,
but
you know what I mean?
Do they have nipples? That's what matters.
I don't know. Oh. I would also like, I know what the goal of the game is, but what is the goal of the game? Like, do they have the sequence with Cherry Forever? Like, I just think there's just so many, my mind races, Porky's Halo version or something. But here, Jerry writes, here comes your night to remember, huh? But yeah, I mean, the legacy of this movie is that it's one of those movies that I think everybody watches. Everybody has a Porky's story. Like, I saw it here, or I saw it with my boys, or we snuck the video out of my dad's room, or you know what I mean, like ridiculous things. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, the legacy of Porky's has not.
Well, the legacy is an interesting thing, but I think all the movies from the 80s are in a perilous place. Although I would say with Rich, towards the end of the movies we pick for our jaunt through history, the movies get a little bit more. They get strengthened in their resolve that the female characters become dominant. And so I think the
female characters are characters and not just objects.
I'm not talking about that, actually.
Okay.
what I'm trying to say is, okay, so I was at a rehearsal tonight with about 30 people in the room with ages ranging from, mid 70s all the way down to their early 20s. And I had to rush out as soon as I was done with my last scene while the stuff is still going on for probably another half an hour, 45 minutes.
Well, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Anyway, when I was telling my director why I had to leave, and she's a little older, I said I had to go home to get. I'm not saying anything unless she's watching. I had to get home to get on a video podcast, and a few other people, and they're like, "Oh, what are you reviewing tonight?" Because I had mentioned it was a movie podcast, and I said Porky's, and they were like, "What? What's Porky's?" And that came from people with ages ranging from their early 20s to their mid 40s.
Maybe they're just trying to be highbrow with you.
They can't.
Maybe it's a mixed company thing. I don't want to admit that I've seen Porky's a mixed company. And Rich and I, like, our podcast is like, we admit that we watch garbage all the time.
No. Most of these people that I had said that I was reviewing Porky's to, it was in a one-on-one conversation. None of them knew what Porky's was.
Can I ask you a question? Can you show these people the movie afterwards and show them the podcast, and we can have it? Like, I think that would be a fascinating future podcast for the show. If you take 4 or 5 of the people you were talking about with, show them the movie, and then we'll have them back on our podcast to discuss their first viewing of Porky's.
I mean,
it'll be a new thing for our show.
Yeah, and he is actually pretty good with 80s movies. He's never heard of this film.
Interesting.
Hold on. Jerry has the purpose of the Porky's game is to avoid obstacles on the way to Porky's and to ultimately destroy Porky's bar. That seems terrible, Jerry. That doesn't seem like it's a true basis of the movie. Are you telling me we're not trying to sleep with Wendy?
You're not trying to get laid at all?
We're just trying to destroy a bar?
I'd rather play the E.T. game.
I don't know, Rich. I feel like the E.T. game's in the same vein. Just E.T.'s not trying to blow up a bar at the end. You just can't get out of a hole. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm wondering if just the long line of guys are trying to get laid and run afoul of the local titty bar owner is maybe keeping people from, investigating what Porky's could be, and maybe even playing against it a little bit, for some people. I don't know.
It is a lowbrow affair. I mean, it's not highbrow, but I also think of the lowbrow, it's the highest of the lowbrow. Is it like, it's the highest of the lowbrow. But I think that would be an interesting show. If you could talk, I'm being dead serious here. I would love if you go out and you recruit a bunch of people to have a Porky's watch, and then we will have them on the show. Because I think it would be fascinating. Because
I can at least get one. I know that.
Well, I would be fascinated if they would do that, and we will follow up with you on this. So I'm going to promise everybody on the show that we will have a moment in a future show towards the end of our 80s Raunch podcast, if Natasha can get somebody or a group of people to watch Porky's, and then we can discuss it, how they viewed it and how they took it. I think that would be a fascinating show, Rich.
That would be a lot of fun, I think.
I think that'd be really interesting. Because I feel also the people that Natasha hangs out with are really intellectually higher than us. So I feel like
what are you saying?
I feel she's higher than you too. But I'm saying that point blank.
I mean,
I know where you sit, and I know what toys you have, my friend. So I feel like I
You-
feel
no, I think you're right. I think this would make, at the end of this arc of episodes, if we circle back and if we can make this happen, I think that would be an interesting way to
fascinating.
capstone.
I think it'd be a great recap episode. So I do pinky swears with my nephews. Pinky swear that we do this.
I can't pinky swear that people are going to want to come onto a video podcast. I'll do what I can.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought you were charismatic and charming.
Ooh.
I am.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Get her done. I put forth a challenge to you to do this. There you go.
You see my glass?
I see it. We still haven't gotten past the idea that touching the camera or looking up and down doesn't matter on a podcast.
It says intercourse. What do you think I'm here for? I'm here to get laid, just like the guys in Porky's. I'll get it.
I understand.
Well, maybe not.
Not me. Anyway, I'm just saying. I think this would be a fascinating episode if you can pull it off.
I'll do what I can.
Okay.
Let's see what I can grab.
So, before I do want to announce next week's movie. I will say I picked it. We picked it.
All right, Ken, you're on. Sorry.
Oh, wait. She needs to come back and watch the Monster Squad and then come back with her review. Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. Natasha's super busy. I have her working on this other thing where we get a Porky's person, a Porky's virgin to watch Porky's.
I've got a week to figure that out while I'm in a room with 30 people. I'll figure it out.
Excellent. So you also have to watch the Monster Squad then.
Done.
Awesome. I'm going to tell you, the best part of the movie comes near the end. It's the absolute greatest thing. It's the single greatest child monster moment ever put on film.
Here's a question for you.
I'm not lying to you.
What is the era of movies that you review on this podcast? Is it only 80s films?
No.
Obviously not Hammer films, 70s.
No. What Rich and I have done, we started with a single year. And what's happening now is that Rich and we find these little, I want to call them seasons. They're not seasons. They're like arcs that we find. And I'll say something and he'll say something and then we find this arc. So 80s Raunch comedies came up and it's often derivative of what's happening in real life. So This summer was supposed to be the big return of raunchy comedies, Joyride, which,
Joyride I like.
You can like a movie.
Bottoms.
I wasn't.
Bottoms, Strays, all these raunchy comedies are coming out and they're trying to get back. And we've lost the comedy movies. And so Rich and I come up with the idea of doing the 80s raunch comedies that we really like. And one of the ones I picked is a movie. I picked next week's movie, and I hope Rich had picked it, because I get so much pleasure, derived joy out of the movie from a camaraderie basis. I don't need a donkey that does a lot of drugs. I don't need somebody trying to commit suicide with a razor that doesn't have a blade. What are you trying to do? Make your wrist smooth and kissable? Put that down. I derive pleasure from a simple movie called Bachelor Party. That is one of the greatest guy camaraderie movies because there's a lot of things going on in it
Hanks?
that were. Oh, yes. Hanks! Oh, you've never seen it?
I've never heard of it.
Oh my fucking God!
It's one of the. I don't want to say blame your mother, but I think your cinematic upbringing, and we've talked about this before, is a little blind on some comedy stuff because I don't think your mom was a big comedy person.
I'm not a big comedy person.
I know.
Well,
I'm not saying this time.
But this movie,
it's got a great tour de force performance from Wendy Jo Sperber, who I love.
It's got Oingo Boingo. It's got everything. It's amazing. But also, what I want to say, Rich and I picked this Bachelor Party movie, because of in the first 10 minutes of the movie, it is established that this 2, 4, 6, 7 people in this movie poster right here are the best of friends. And it's a very guy-based comedy, but then there's serious subjects in the movie. One of the guys is completely suicidal after breaking up with his wife.
No, Joe, I haven't.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened? Jerry Kimura writes, "Bachelor Party is great. I know I derive such one of my favorite lines in Natasha. It's the stupidest line. Tom Hanks is making dinner, and there's 2 lines during the dinner sequence. Yes, what are we making tonight? Oh yes, America's favorite food, grilled animal flesh. And it's just Tom Hanks delivering the line, and then he brings over a bowl with lettuce and potatoes in it, and he puts it on the table and he says, "It's potato salad. Hope you like chunky style." And it's just the line deliveries from Tom Hanks in this movie are fantastic. And aside from a couple of things, and Rich and I will talk about it next week, aside from a couple of things with regards to how it treats one trans character, it is offensive but not bad. It's funny offensive. Like there's a donkey show. Like it's one of the greatest movies ever made. There's also a very scathing review of Cineplexes towards the end of the movie. That's one of the greatest things. This theater has 23 theaters. How are we going to find them? And there's a map on the wall with the numbers going all these different directions. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's a movie that doesn't necessarily. There's so many quotable lines in it. I'm so excited about doing it. Has she heard of Mazes and Monsters? That's the time. Yeah, we said that, right?
That was a TV movie that Tom Hanks had his very first professional acting gig on.
Old lady, Jerry writes, the old lady pulling on the hot dog. Yes, there are so many great scenes. The old lady, is that the foot long? And then some. Such a great movie. Natasha has no idea what we're talking about. No. And then Ken writes, would you consider The Hangover a Bachelor Party knockoff? It's not a knockoff, but I would say The Bachelor Party is
inspiration.
It's inspiration. It's DNA. Yeah. Except I would say that almost all the characters in Bachelor Party are the Zach Galifianakis character. Almost every one of them is quirky in a specifically quirky way. But
we'll get into that next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a great week. So, Natasha, where can people find more exciting stuff about you? Because this is like your 3rd time on the show now. You're becoming like resident nympho. Look at that.
I know.
You went out and changed it.
No, I couldn't get cherry, so I'm drinking sherry.
Sure. Well, you could have done Cherry Forever. That's the name of the episode tonight, though.
I know.
But anyway.
I really feel very cherry.
Okay, fan. Where can people find you, and what are you working on now? Because I know you're always working on movies and stuff.
Okay,
and plays.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. So.
Oh my God. Yes.
My brain just broke.
Yeah, I understand.
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
Do you just look for you? Your name is going to magically be on all of those things?
If you literally Google my name, I'd pop up as director. So
that sounds like something out of the Ring. Natasha Butsky, she comes out of the television. Go ahead.
Say Natasha Butsky 3 times into a mirror.
I've done that. Don't ever do that. I've done it at summer camp. Not my name, but the actual figure. Was it
a Bloody Mary thing? Were you doing Bloody Mary?
Yes. I woke up in the boathouse the next morning, about 2 miles away. It was a nightmare.
You're lucky you're not dead.
I know.
Anyway, where can people find you?
Okay.
Chatterbox.
All the social medias. Right now, I'm working on a local one-act festival as an actress for short plays. Getting ready to shoot a film in a couple of weeks. Rich and I have films at the Route 22 Film Festival in Bethlehem in a couple of weeks. And I'm also in a production it's called Bulls. It's a take on the Greek tragedy of Phaedra next month. So busy.
Wow. You see, Rich, she's definitely hanging out with people that are smarter than us.
Honest to God, I was at rehearsal. As soon as I got done with my first bunches of scenes, I hopped off stage and ran up to the costume closet to do a Zoom meeting for the film that I am shooting a week and a half from now. And then immediately, once I was done with everything, drove 40 minutes to get home and get on this podcast. So
We're excited to have you. You should come back more. And now you have homework because Ken wants you to watch the Monster Squad.
Well, here's the thing.
And we want to try to get you to do PORKY'S with another person.
I will try to get everyone for PORKY'S. But
we can do up to 9 people.
You have to give me something in return.
Wow, I don't like this reciprocation thing. What do I have to do, Natasha?
One of these days, I get to pick one of the the genre groupings. And you have to
one of the genre grouping. How about just a movie?
You have to show up for all 4 to 6 episodes of that genre.
Done.
Okay.
That's bullshit. She's too busy.
I know.
She's too busy for us.
We'll see. I think she will make the time.
Only if I pull together the PORKY'S group.
Okay.
I'll give you. Listen, here's what I'll give you. Rich and I don't know what we're doing for Christmas yet. We don't know what we're doing for November yet. We know what we're doing for the rest of the summer. We know what we're doing for September, and October. I will give you our first 4 weeks in January.
Done.
4 weeks. But you have to watch the Monster Squad and come on and talk about it and get at least one person in your very erudite group to watch PORKY'S and come on and talk about their experience.
Done.
I love bets. Love betting. It's fantasy football season. I love it. Okay. Rich, where can people find you? And also, everyone here saw it. Rich, where can people find you? And also, let's talk about this shindig you're doing at the Diva Theater as well.
Okay. If you're looking forward to seeing me live, and why would you? This coming Saturday at 8:00 at the Diva Theater in Scranton, I will be part of their Page and Stage evening, in which local writers are talking about their projects. I'll have 15 minutes where I will talk about filmmaking and screenwriting here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and I'll be presenting a sneak peek at one of our shorts that's currently in post-production. We're going to have a 3-minute or so little segment out of that. So it's from our short This Way to the Egress, which is a dark comedy, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Don't want to spoil the surprises that you'll get if you are there.
If it's Saturday. About P.T. Barnum and suicide, I'm in.
It's not.
If you are also in the Scranton area and are sticking around for a couple of days, I will be at the theater doing the one acts 4 blocks away.
Yes, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of this coming week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The following Saturday, the 26th, again, I will be in Bethlehem at the Route 22 Film Festival alongside Natasha, as we are presenting 2 shorts there. One is The Test, which I wrote, Natasha directed and starred in. And the other is, as part of the festival's Silent Film Challenge, is Reese's Pieces, which Natasha wrote and asked me to direct. And
is it a loving tribute to E.T.?
No, it is not. It's a little bit more.
I told you. Did you tell Natasha my idea for Reese's Pieces? What I thought Reese's Pieces were? Did you tell her?
No.
Okay, so Rich was talking about this Reese's Pieces thing, and I thought it was you being a cool way of you discussing a woman trying to pick the right guy.
Not that.
So, Reese's Pieces. No, okay.
Little side pieces or pieces of ass.
Side is more what it was. So I thought it was like a witty romantic comedy kind of thing.
I mean, it's a nice idea, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I do. I actually like how he read into that title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I finish my plug?
I'm moderately intelligent on some nights. We'll see once you get to Monster Squad whether or not you like me. Go ahead.
Also, when I'm not on this podcast, I can sometimes be heard on the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle podcast, The Film Scribes. And although it's been on hiatus for several months now, coming in September will be the return of the Big Picture podcast with my lovely and wonderful co-host, Natasha Bogutsky. Besides that, all my film writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com, including actually this morning we published a great review by longtime contributor and good friend William Gadavaskis, where he reviewed the new Back to the Future the musical on Broadway. He saw it over the weekend.
It was it was a really good review. I want to give Bill a lot of credit on it because I think it takes into account all of what you're questioning if you're deciding to pay $120 to go see a Back to the Future musical. I think he hits everything appropriately where it needs to be hit. Like, are you going to get pissed off with the changes? Are you like, does the music work? You know, I think he hits it exactly where, if you're thinking about going, it's a great read. I enjoyed it immensely today.
We have a few other interesting, fun-filled articles coming up in the next several days, as soon as I can finish writing them. And you can find me on the socials at FilmBuffRich on the Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X. Suck it, Elon.
Let's see. You can find me at JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, the Twitter, the X, whatever the fuck he's doing today. You know, whatever sign he's going to put on top of his building to piss off humans. Instagram. We have the Loud Nerdy podcast, which we'll be doing tomorrow night. One of the people in the comment section, Jerry Kimura, will be joining us, along with Kyle DeFina, where we'll talk about all the pop culture news of the week. We'll talk about, great shows like Strange New Worlds and My Adventures with Superman, which is awesome. It's awesome.
I just got dipped my toe into that, and I'm loving it.
I'm
not a big
fan
of the animation style in general, that anime style, but I think it really captures, the
heart, man. The heart. Yes. It gets Superman right.
Yes.
Fuck for the fucking bleak at heart who've been sitting in the stew that is the Snyderverse. It it gets Superman right.
Superman and Lois also pretty much hits it out of the park too.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to mean it like that. I didn't. But this one is a real cool. I can't recommend it enough. But we'll be talking about that and a couple other things. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because wow, it was fun. And having a 5 and a 7-year-old in the house and experiencing turtle power way after, like 30 years after the fact, is a wild thing. And I had a turtle shirt and they had turtle shirts. It was great. We're coming up on an hour and a half. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank our special guest, Natasha Bogutsky. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank everybody who made comments tonight. We appreciate you all. We'll see everybody next week for Bachelor Party, one of the unsung great 80s comedies. I killed a mule. Just so good. And we'll see everybody next week. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night. Go watch a movie. Get somebody to watch Porky's. Get somebody to watch Bachelor Party. Because that movie, I guarantee you, that movie will change how you view Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is great, but he's juggling throughout the entire movie, all the different plot points. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic movie. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great night.